You were never supposed to get anything. Dad told me before he died. The house, the policy, all of it goes to Marcus. Just sign the release and walk away with your dignity. Because if you don't, we will drag this through probate court until you're too broke and too broken to fight back." My mother did not raise her voice when she said it. She sat across from me at her kitchen table, the one I had eaten breakfast at every morning for 18 years, and delivered that sentence the way you read a grocery list. Flat, practiced, final. Her hands were folded around a mug of chamomile tea. My father had been dead for 11 days. Before I tell you what I found out about that will and what I did about it, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is right now. I want to see how far this story reaches. I am a CPA. I have spent 7 years reading financial documents the way other people read novels line by line, looking for the thing that doesn't belong. When my mother slid that deed of release across the table toward me, the first thing I did was not cry. The first thing I did was read it. My father, Gerald Mercer, had died of a stroke at 61. He had been a contractor, not a wealthy man, but a careful one. He owned a 3-bedroom house in Columbus, Ohio, mortgage-free, and he had carried a $380,000 life insurance policy since I was 4 years old. For as long as I could remember, the beneficiary on that policy was split equally 50% to my older brother Marcus, 50% to me. His will, the one I had witnessed him sign at the kitchen table 6 years ago with his attorney present, said the same thing. The document my mother was asking me to sign said something entirely different. According to the papers in front of me, my father had executed a new will, 14 days before his stroke. In this version, the house transferred to Marcus outright. The life insurance proceeds, upon collection, were to be deposited into a joint account held by Marcus and my mother. My name did not appear anywhere except on the deed of release. They wanted me to sign the document confirming I had no claim and was relinquishing any right to contest. "I've never seen this will," I said. My voice was steady. That is the thing about being a numbers person. When something doesn't add up, you don't panic. You get methodical. "You weren't supposed to," my mother said. "Dad wanted to tell you himself." Then the stroke happened. My brother Marcus was leaning against the kitchen counter. He was 34, 2 years older than me, and he had my father's height and none of his character. He was wearing a golf shirt and an expression I can only describe as impatient, the look of a man waiting for a formality to conclude so he could get on with his afternoon. "It's already filed with the probate court," Marcus said. "This is just cleanup. Sign it, Claire." I looked at the signature on the new will. Gerald Andrew Mercer, in blue ballpoint pen. The letters were familiar. The spacing was not. My father had Parkinson's tremor in his right hand since he was 58. Every document he had signed in the last 3 years of his life had a slight rightward drift, a barely perceptible shake in the descending strokes. I had watched him sign birthday cards, holiday checks, a refinance document 2 years ago. I knew what his signature looked like in his last years. The signature on this will was too smooth, too controlled. The letters sat perfectly upright, like someone who had practiced the motion but had never lived inside that hand. I set the pen down. "I need a few days to review this with my own attorney." My mother's expression did not change. That was the tell. A mother who had just handed her daughter surprising news about her late husband's estate would have reacted confusion, defensiveness, sorrow, something. Instead, she picked up her chamomile tea and took a slow sip. "That's your right," she said. "But I want you to understand something. Marcus has already spoken to a lawyer. If you contest this, they will argue that you have a history of financial disagreements with your father. They'll bring up the loan he gave you for your apartment in 2019. They will make it very ugly, very public, and very expensive. You have a husband. You have a life. Think about what you're risking." I thought about Daniel, at home waiting for me, who had held me while I cried the night my father died and said nothing would ever make it okay, but he would be there for every minute of it. I thought about the signature on that will. I thought about 14 days, 2 weeks before my father's stroke, when he had already been showing early symptoms, when his hands had been shaking badly enough that he'd stopped driving. "I'll be in touch," I said. I stood up, picked up my coat, and walked to the front door. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," Marcus called after me. I did not answer. I walked to my car, got in, and locked the door. I sat in my parents' driveway for a moment, looking at the house. The gutter on the north side still needed replacing. My father had meant to do it in the spring. Then I took out my phone and called my husband. Daniel answered on the first ring. I told him everything. I did not cry. I gave him the facts the same way I would present a client audit, the new will, the timeline, the signature, the release they wanted me to sign. When I finished, there was a pause. "What do you need?" he said. That is the only question that matters in a moment like that. Not what should we do, not are you sure, just what do you need? "I need a handwriting expert," I said, "and I need the contact information for Dad's original estate attorney. I'll start looking tonight." I drove home with the kind of calm that only comes when you have decided that grief is going to have to wait, because there is work to do. The original attorney was a man named Mr. Caldwell, semi-retired, who had drafted my father's will 6 years ago and kept a copy in his files. I reached him the next morning. When I described the new will that had appeared in probate, he was quiet for a long moment. "Gerald never contacted me about any amendments," he said. "Is that unusual?" "It would be extremely unusual." He was methodical. When he set up the original document, he was very clear that he wanted both children treated equally. He mentioned it more than once. Another pause. "Miss Mercer, who filed this will with the probate court?" "My brother Marcus." The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know about what Mr. Caldwell was thinking without him saying a word. "I hired a forensic document examiner named Dr. Osei out of Cincinnati, a woman with 22 years of experience and a CV that included testimony in federal fraud cases. I overnighted her a photocopy of the new will, alongside 3 examples of my father's authenticated signatures from the last 2 years of his life. A birthday card to me, dated 14 months before his death, a vehicle title transfer from 8 months prior, and a notarized home equity document from 2 years ago. Her report came back in 9 days. The conclusion was 4 sentences long, but the relevant one was this: the signature on the document labeled Last Will and Testament of Gerald Andrew Mercer, dated March 4th, exhibited none of the neuromotor tremor patterns consistent with the authenticated exemplars. In her professional opinion, the questioned signature was produced by a different hand. I read that sentence 4 times. Then I sat at my kitchen table and did something I had not done since the night my father died. I let myself cry, not from grief, not yet, but from the specific, white-hot anger of understanding that my brother had stood at my father's bedside in the last 2 weeks of his life and forged his signature on a document designed to erase me from his estate. Daniel sat with me. He didn't say anything. He just stayed. When I was done, I washed my face, made coffee, and started planning. The probate process moved slowly. That was both a problem and an opportunity. The will had been filed but not yet admitted. The estate was in the review period, which meant no assets had been distributed yet. I had a window, narrow, but real. I did not call my mother. I did not text my brother. I did not send an angry letter or post anything on social media, or call any relatives to tell my side of the story. I went gray. I became as quiet and uninteresting as a stone. I returned their check-in messages with brief, neutral replies. "I'm taking some time. Thank you for your patience. I understand this is hard for everyone." The gray rock method. You give a narcissist nothing to feed on, no emotion to twist, no reaction to weaponize. You become so boring that they start to feel safe. And when people feel safe, they get sloppy. Marcus sent me a follow-up text 10 days after our meeting. "Just checking in on the paperwork, Claire. The sooner we wrap this up, the better for all of us. Probate drags on forever if there's a contest." I replied, "Still reviewing. Thanks for your patience." He responded with a thumbs-up emoji. He thought I was folding. I was not folding. I was building. Mr. Caldwell agreed to serve as a witness to what I was planning, and to bring a copy of the original will. Dr. Osei had agreed to provide a sworn affidavit. I had a meeting scheduled with a probate litigation attorney named Miss Park, who had reviewed the forensic report and used the phrase, "This is a strong case," in a tone that did not sound like empty reassurance. And I had discovered something else, something I had not been looking for but could not ignore once I found it. When I pulled my father's most recent tax return, which I had prepared myself as I had done for the past 4 years, I cross-referenced it against the life insurance policy documents that had been mailed to the family after his death. The policy was through a carrier my father had held since I was a child. The original beneficiary designation on file, with the insurance company, not the will, but the separate beneficiary form the carrier maintained, still listed me at 50%. Marcus had apparently forgotten that a life insurance beneficiary designation is a contract with the carrier that exists independently of a will. Even if the forged will were somehow admitted to probate, the insurance company would pay according to the beneficiary form on file, not the estate document. The $380,000 policy was, legally, still half mine by contract. He had forged a will to steal a house, and had apparently not done enough research to realize the larger asset was already protected. I did not tell anyone this yet. Not Marcus, not my mother, not even Miss Park, until I was ready. I called Marcus and asked him to meet me at Miss Park's office. I told him I wanted to discuss a settlement before things escalated. I told him I was tired and sad and I just wanted to find a way forward that didn't destroy what was left of our family. I let my voice waver when I said it. He agreed immediately. He even sounded magnanimous about it. "That's all I've ever wanted, Claire. Just for this to be over." Of course it was. He thought I was surrendering. I arrived 30 minutes early. Miss Park's office was in a building downtown, 7th floor, clean lines, the kind of place that communicated competence without excess. I sat with her and Mr. Caldwell and walked them through exactly what was going to happen and what I needed each of them to do. Mr. Caldwell would be present as the original attorney of record. Miss Park would be present as my legal counsel and a licensed officer of the court. I would not be recording anything. Ohio's consent laws made that complicated, but two attorneys present in a meeting where material admissions were made was not hearsay. It was testimony. Just get him talking, Miss Park said. He'll do the rest. I went to the restroom and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. I had not slept well in 3 weeks. I thought about my father, about the way he used to drive me to school and never say much, just have the radio on, and how that silence had always felt safe. I thought about the last time I saw him, 10 days before the stroke, when he had hugged me at the door and held on a second longer than usual. I went back to the conference room and sat down at the far end of the table. Marcus arrived with my mother. I had not expected her. She came in wearing a dark blazer, looking composed, looking like the aggrieved widow rather than the co-conspirator. She sat next to Marcus and folded her hands on the table in that way she had calm, certain, impenetrable. Neither of them acknowledged Mr. Caldwell at first. Then Marcus noticed him and paused. What is he doing here? He was Dad's estate attorney, I said. I asked him to join us so we're all working from the same documents. Marcus looked at my mother. A brief look, a half-second of consultation. She gave the smallest nod. Fine, Marcus said. He set his briefcase on the table and opened it. Inside was a folder with the deed of release and a second document I hadn't seen before, a mutual release and settlement agreement, which would have bound me to silence about the estate in exchange for a payment of $15,000. $15,000. Out of a house worth $290,000 and a life insurance policy worth $380,000. I kept my expression neutral. What is this? We're trying to be fair, my mother said. This is more than you were left. We didn't have to offer anything. I appreciate that, I said. And then, because I needed them talking, because I needed them confident. Can you walk me through the timeline of the new will? I'm still trying to understand how I didn't know about it. Marcus leaned back. He was the kind of man who loved to explain things. He had loved it since we were children, the older sibling authority. The implication that you were slow for not understanding already. Dad had been thinking about restructuring for a while, he said. We talked about it. He felt that since I was the one who had been around helping with the house, dealing with his appointments, it made sense to recognize that. He never mentioned it to me. He didn't want to fight. Marcus shrugged. You know how he was. I do, I said. Which is why I'm having trouble understanding why he drove 40 minutes to a notary office on March 4th, when his neurologist had documented that he was experiencing significant motor impairment that week. The room went very quiet. What are you talking about? My mother said. I pulled his medical records. I hadn't, actually not yet. But Marcus didn't know that. And the tremor in his jaw told me I had hit something real. His physician noted hand tremor severity at a follow-up on March 1st. 3 days before the date on this will. Marcus straightened. People have good days. They do, I agreed. But Dr. Osei doesn't think March 4th was one of them. Who? The forensic document examiner I hired. I set her report on the table. She compared the signature on this will against 3 authenticated exemplars from the last 2 years. Her conclusion is that the questioned signature was produced by a different hand. My mother picked up the report. She read the first page. Her expression did not change, but her hand tightened almost imperceptibly on the edge of the paper. Marcus stood up. This is ridiculous. You hired someone to manufacture a report because you're angry that Dad didn't leave you what you expected. Sit down, Marcus, Miss Park said. Not loudly, just with the particular flatness of someone who does not need to raise their voice to be heard. He sat. I also spoke with the life insurance carrier this week, I said. The beneficiary designation on file with them predates this will by 6 years. It names me at 50%. A will doesn't override a beneficiary contract. My mother set down the report. She was looking at Marcus now, not at me. There was something shifting behind her eyes, not guilt exactly. More like calculation. The kind that happens when someone starts running the numbers on a situation and realizes the math has changed. Marcus. Her voice was low. It's fine, he said. She can't prove anything. The notary who witnessed the March 4th document, Mr. Caldwell said, speaking for the first time since the meeting began. He had a slow, deliberate way of talking, like a man who billed by the hour and saw no reason to rush. Do you have their contact information? Because when I called the notary registry for Franklin County to cross-reference the seal on this document, the commission number doesn't match any active notary registered at that address. The air in the room changed. Marcus's face did something complicated. The confidence drained out of it in stages. First the jaw, then the eyes, then the particular set of his shoulders that had always telegraphed certainty. I don't know anything about that, he said. I just brought the document Dad gave me. Dad gave it to you, I repeated. Yes. Pre-signed? With a mismatched notary seal? He stopped, started again. There may have been some confusion about which copy was filed. We had multiple drafts. My mother made a sound. It was small, barely audible, but it was the sound of someone who has just understood, fully and completely, that the person sitting next to them has walked them both off a cliff. Marcus, she said. Her voice was different now. What did you do? It was not a question. Mom, What did you do? She pulled her hands back from the table and set them in her lap. She moved her chair, just slightly, an inch away from him. It was the smallest physical motion, but it was unmistakable. She was separating herself. I signed documents. You told me they were amendments Dad had already approved. You told me the attorney had reviewed them. They were amendments. Gerald never told me he was changing anything. Her voice was rising now, and for the first time in this meeting, what I heard in it was not performance. He never said a word to me about restructuring. I assumed you said. She turned to look at Miss Park, and there was something raw in her face now, something that might have been the first honest emotion she had shown in 3 weeks. I didn't know the documents were forged. Marcus slammed his hand on the table. Nobody said forged. The forensic examiner said it, Miss Park replied calmly. The notary registry says it. Mr. Caldwell's records say it. And you just told us your father gave you a pre-executed document with a notary seal, which means either your father notarized his own will, or someone else did. Marcus's mouth opened and closed. I want to be very clear, my mother said. She was looking at Miss Park, not at her son. I signed a document Marcus brought to me. He told me Gerald had already executed it and needed a spousal acknowledgement. I did not know. I did not know the will was not genuine. Mom. Marcus's voice dropped to something desperate. Don't. She looked at him for a long moment. My brother, who she had driven to every baseball game and every college visit and defended in every argument at every dinner table for 34 years. She looked at him the way you look at something you've been carrying for too long and are finally putting down. I am not going to prison for you, she said. The words landed in the conference room like a dropped tray, sudden, clarifying, final. Miss Park looked at me. I gave the smallest nod. Marcus, Miss Park said, I want to advise you that you are currently in the presence of 2 officers of the court, and anything you say in this room can and will be part of the record in the probate proceeding and any associated criminal referral. Forgery of a testamentary document in Ohio is a felony. So is filing a fraudulent document with a probate court. Marcus said nothing. He was staring at the table. The deed of release, I said. I picked it up. The document they had driven across town to watch me sign. The paper that was supposed to end this quietly and cheaply. I held it for a moment. Then I set it back down. Unsigned. I won't be signing this. We left him in that conference room. My mother walked out without looking at her son. She stopped in the hallway, and for a moment she just stood there, one hand against the wall, not quite steady. I did not go to her. I wanted to. Some part of me that was still 11 years old and believed mothers were supposed to protect you, wanted to cross that hall and offer her something. But I had medical examiner reports and an insurance contract and 6 years of watching her choose Marcus in every disagreement we had ever had, and I understood that what she was feeling in that hallway was not grief for what she had done to me. It was shock that the plan had failed. I walked past her to the elevator. Daniel was in the lobby. He had driven downtown and waited for 2 hours without being asked. When I stepped out of the elevator and he saw my face, not crying, just done. Just finally and completely done. He crossed the lobby and put his arms around me. Is it over? He asked. It's starting to be, I said. It took 4 months for the full consequence to arrive. And it did not arrive quietly. Marcus retained a criminal defense attorney and spent the first 3 weeks insisting the signature was authentic and Dr. Osei's report was biased. Then the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office requested the original document for independent analysis. That examination confirmed Dr. Osei's findings and added a new detail. The ink on the signature was consistent with a pen type that had not been manufactured before 18 months ago. My father had signed the original will 6 years before he died. He was charged with forgery of a testamentary instrument, filing a false instrument in a public proceeding, and attempted theft by deception. 3 felony counts. My mother was not charged. Her cooperation with the prosecutor's office, and the fact that she had signed an ancillary document rather than the forged will itself, kept her in a complicated legal gray area. I do not know what she told them. I do not know what she has told herself. I have not spoken to her since the day in the hallway. 2 weeks before Marcus's preliminary hearing, I received a notification from his attorney. He had filed an emergency motion in probate court to freeze the estate assets pending his criminal defense, claiming he needed access to estate funds to pay legal fees. I sat at my kitchen table at 11 o'clock at night and read that filing with the particular exhaustion of someone who has fought hard and won and is now watching the person they beat try to claw back from the floor. Daniel brought me tea and sat across from me and waited. Miss Park filed a response within 48 hours. The motion was denied. The probate judge admitted my father's original will, the one Mr. Caldwell had drafted, the one I had watched my father sign, and the estate proceeded under its terms. The house was split equally. The life insurance proceeded according to the beneficiary form on file. Marcus pleaded guilty to 1 count of forgery as part of a negotiated agreement. He received 2 years of probation, community service, and a court order to pay restitution. He did not go to prison, which is something I have made a degree of peace with because the alternative would have required me to spend another year in depositions and hearings, and I had already decided that I was done spending my life in rooms where my brother was. The subject of conversation. The house sold in the spring. My half of the proceeds went into a savings account that I have not touched yet. I am not sure what I will do with it. My father saved that money for 30 years, working jobs that hurt his body and came home smelling like lumber and concrete, and I am not in a hurry to spend it on anything he wouldn't have respected. Some nights I sit in my home office after Daniel has gone to bed, and I pull out the birthday card my father sent me 2 Christmases ago. He wasn't a man of many words. The card says, "Claire, proud of you every day. Love, Dad." His handwriting has the tremor in it, the slight rightward drift, the shake in the descending strokes that I know now as well as I know my own signature. I think about the 2 weeks before he died, when Marcus was there at the house, and I was at work, and my father was already losing small things, keys, the names of television shows, sometimes the thread of a sentence. I think about what it must have looked like. My brother, with a piece of paper and a pen, and my father's trust, which had never once given anyone a reason not to use it. I am a CPA. I understand that some losses are recoverable, and some are not. The money was recoverable. My father is not. I changed my locks. I changed my phone number. I removed my mother and brother from every digital account that had ever listed them. It took a weekend. Daniel helped. We ordered dinner afterward and ate it at the kitchen table. And at some point I realized I was not thinking about the estate or the hearing schedule or Marcus's attorney fees. I was just eating dinner with my husband in our home, which is ours and no one else's. Peace is not something you find. It is something you build, carefully, from the materials left behind after the people who should have loved you decided not to. It is expensive to build and it takes longer than you think it should, and there are nights when you question the foundation. But it holds. If you have ever had to choose between your family and yourself, and you chose yourself, type peace in the comments. I want to see how many of us there are.